Chapter 181. When Jingyu returned to the royal residence, she was surprised to find that everyone in the royal residence seemed to have disappeared. Lanterns were lit everywhere, but there was no one in sight. Confusion appeared in her eyes as she walked towards the lotus garden. When she saw that the lotus garden was also silent, she was even more puzzled. "In Xiao, in Xiao." Jingyu raised her voice and called out, "Imperial consort, you're finally back." In Xiao hurriedly ran out of the courtyard. When she saw Jingyu, her eyes instantly turned red and filled with tears. "What's wrong? Why are you crying?" Jingyu frowned and asked In Xiao, "Imperial consort, the 9th emperor is injured." In Xiao looked at Jingyu with teary eyes and said, "What?" Jingyu was shocked and hurriedly asked where Xiao Chun was. When she found out that Xiao Chun was in the room, she hurriedly walked in and realized that everyone was gathered in the courtyard. When Xing Yi and Xing Er saw that Jingyu had returned, their expressions were slightly strange and they bowed. "What happened?" Jingyu looked at the tightly shut door and asked. "Master went out to find Imperial Consort and was met with an assassination attempt. He is currently treating his wounds," Xing Yi said stiffly as he pursed his lips tightly and looked at Jingyu. Jingyu could clearly feel the dissatisfaction coming from Xing Yi. "How is Xiaochen?" Jingyu took a deep breath and continued to ask. "His wounds are not deep. He's not dead." Xing Yi was probably really angry as his tone was somewhat uncomfortable. Jingyu lowered her head and was about to continue asking when the door opened. The physician walked out and explained the situation. Jingyu then found out that Xiao Chun was injured by a sword and the wound had already been bandaged. When Jingyu heard that it was not serious, she heaved a sigh of relief. Just as she was about to walk in, Xing Yi blocked her path. "Imperial consort, the physician said that master needs to rest. I'll have to trouble your imperial consort to rest in the side chamber." As interrogation officer once spoke, he pursed his lips slightly and bent down. Jingyu was slightly taken aback. She lowered her head and stepped back. In Xiao's expression was furious. Just as she was about to step forward and speak, she was held back by Jingyu. "Let's go." Jingyu turned and walked towards the side chamber. Xing Er. Jing. Interrogation Officer 1 looked back at Interrogation Officer 2. He lowered his gaze and said nothing. The two of them stood guard in front of the door in silence, not moving at all. Jing Yin. Xiao. 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 This made Jingyu feel very uncomfortable. As her thoughts ran wild, Jingyu began to feel sleepy. However, just as Jingyu was about to fall asleep, a loud noise came from behind her. It scared Jingyu so much that she sat up and looked sideways. It was the man who was holding onto the door frame and looking at her with a gloomy expression. "Xiao Chun." Jingyu blinked and looked at Xiao Chun. Her gaze fell on the bandaged wound on Xiao Chun's chest. Fresh blood was seeping out. "Master, you can't." Xing Yi and Xing Er appeared in front of the door. Just as they were about to speak, they were stopped by Xiao Chen. "Get out." Xiao Chen's voice was cold and decisive. There was no room for resistance. Xing Yi and Xing Er's expressions changed slightly. They stopped what they were doing and slowly left the room. Jingyu looked at Xiao Chun with a complicated expression. She slowly stood up. The two of them looked at each other for a long time without speaking. Jingyu swallowed. Chapter 182. Jingyu looked at Xiao Chun with a complicated expression as he slowly stood up. The two of them looked at each other for a long time, but neither of them spoke. Jingyu swallowed her saliva. Dashed the wound, split open. Jingyu said in a small voice, "Huh, even you care?" Xiao Chun laughed disdainfully as he silently stared at Jingyu's face. Jingyu was rendered speechless by Xiao Chun's expression. "You went to see Hellion Theo?" Xiao Chun slowly walked towards Jingyu and asked. "I lost the bet last time. I agreed to 3 of his requests, so I went to fulfill them today." Jingyu lowered her head and said in a small voice, "You lost the bet?" Xiao Chun slowly frowned as he scrutinized Jingyu. His eyes were filled with questions. Why didn't he know that Jingyu and Hellion Theo had a bet? Jingyu swallowed her saliva and told Xiao Chun everything about the bet. "So you were taken away by Hellion Theo when you went out today, and you didn't go to see him yourself?" Xiao Chen's expression softened slightly as he stared at Jingyu and asked, "Yes." Jingyu lowered her head and said, "I only wanted to go to the restaurant to take a look. I didn't expect to meet Helly and Theo on the way." Xiao Chen slowly let out a sigh of relief, but his face paled a little. Only now did he feel the pain from his wound. "I'm sorry." Jingyu lowered her head and said in a small voice, "I didn't know it would be like this. I caused you to get hurt." Xiao Chen sat down and touched something on the table. Xiao Chen was slightly surprised and turned his head to look. There was a large red sachet on the table. There were 2 ducks embroidered on the sachet. He had no idea what it was. Xiao Chen silently picked up the sachet and turned his head to look at Jingyu in confusion. That. Jingyu looked at the sachet in Xiao Chen's hand and suddenly became embarrassed. She said in an aggrieved voice, "I really can't learn how to embroider mandarin ducks, so I embroidered that. Just make do with it. If you don't like it, you can give it back to me." "This is for me?" Xiao Chen's body trembled as he turned his head to look at Jingyu in disbelief. I wanted to buy one for you, but this embroidery is too ugly." Jingyu lowered her head silently. She was so embarrassed. "No, I like it." Xiao Chen looked at the sachet in his hand with a bright smile on his face. He looked at the sachet as if he was looking at a treasure in the world. Jingyu saw Xiao Chen's expression soften, so she stepped forward and said, "The wound?" "It's fine." Xiao Chen held the sachet tightly in his hand and looked at Jingyu as she walked closer. He reached out and pulled her into his embrace. He hugged Jingyu tightly and said in a deep voice, "Stay away from Helly and Theo in the future." "Why? Are you 2 enemies?" Jingyu pushed Xiao Chen away slightly, afraid that she would touch his wound. When she heard Xiao Chen's words, she was slightly stunned and asked in confusion, "There's no why. I just forbid you from interacting with Helly and Theo in the future," Xiao Chen said seriously as he pushed Jingyu away. "Oh, then I still owe him 2 requests. What should I do?" Jingyu blinked and looked at Xiao Chen as she asked, "You don't have to keep your promises when dealing with people like him." Xiao Chen stood up and led Jingyu to the bed. His expression was unpredictable. Jingyu looked at Xiao Chen's side profile and felt that something was strange. Why did Xiao Chen give such big suggestions to Helly and Theo? "Xiao Chen, what kind of person is Helly and Theo?" Jingyu asked curiously as she helped Xiao Chen sit down. Chapter 183. Xiao Chen, what kind of person is Helly and Theo? Jingyu asked curiously as she helped Xiao Chen sit down. This is a national matter. You don't need to know." Xiao Chen's face paled a little, and he said calmly, "Stay by my side. You're not allowed to go anywhere." Jingyu looked at Xiao Chen, who was frowning and closing his eyes. He seemed very tired, and he didn't want to let go of her hand. Jingyu frowned, and she could only sit by the bed and watch over Xiao Chen. "Since you're injured because of me, I'll bear with it." Xiao Chen fell into a deep sleep, and Jingyu yawned continuously. In the end, she couldn't resist the fatigue and fell asleep on the edge of the bed. That night, Jingyu didn't sleep very well. In her dreams, Xiao Chen's face would appear for a while, and then Helly and Theo's face would appear. It was a mess. "Oh." Jingyu opened her sleepy eyes and realized that her arm was numb from her pillow. "See? Numb?" Jingyu moved her arm, and a sudden numbness came over her, causing Jingyu's little face to contort. "You're awake?" Xiao Chen narrowed his eyes as he looked at Jingyu, who was swinging her arm, and said calmly, "It's all your fault. You held my hand the whole night, and I couldn't sleep." Jingyu looked at Xiao Chen with a resentful pout. Xiao Chen looked down at his hand, and sure enough, it was tightly holding onto Jingyu. Jingyu looked at Xiao Chen's confused face, and she suddenly felt her temples throbbing. Did this man completely forget about what happened last night? Io, how annoying. Xiao Chen was injured. This was an earth-shattering event in the entire Wangfu. Jingyu was ordered by Xiao Chen not to leave his sight for even a single step. It was instantly a tragedy. In the Wangfu, there were no other women other than Jingyu and Yin Xiao. The task of taking care of Xiao Chen naturally fell on Jingyu. "Where is your hand? Where are your hands?" Jingyu held a bowl of hot porridge and looked at Xiao Chen, who was leaning against the bed. "No." Xiao Chen looked at Jingyu seriously. Jingyu was going crazy. "Gone?" Then what are those two things that are tugging at my sleeves? Pig trotters. Feed me. Xiao Chun continued to stare at Jingyu. Okay, I will feed you, Jingyu said through gritted teeth. Seeing that you were injured because of me, I will endure it. Jingyu scooped up a spoonful of hot porridge and brought it to Xiao Chen's mouth. However, Xiao Chen actually didn't open his mouth. Jingyu stared at Xiao Chun, and Xiao Chun stared back at Jingyu. The two of them stared at each other. Jingyu looked at the porridge in her hand and said, "It's not poisonous. Open your mouth. It's hot. Blow." Xiao Chen quietly spat out 2 words. Jingyu's face turned green. I will endure it. Jingyu brought the porridge back and blew on it a few times before bringing it back to Xiao Chen's mouth. After feeding him a bowl of porridge, Jingyu felt that this was a living torture. The scariest thing was that this torture was still going on. More. God. Ever since Xiao Chun was injured, he didn't do any work. All he did was pester Jingyu. This made Jingyu suspect that Xiao Chun wasn't injured, but possessed. Xiao Chun, sit properly. Jingyu forcefully straightened Xiao Chen's face. Xiao Chun frowned unhappily. He didn't let go of Jingyu's hands, and his legs trapped Jingyu, making her unable to move. This made Jingyu very angry. Look at you. You are the injured one. Sit properly, Jingyu said angrily as she stared at Xiao Chen's calm face. Chapter 184. You're not allowed to leave. Xiao Chen didn't let go of her hand. His head was in the right place. I'm not leaving. I'm going to pee. Jingyu slapped Xiao Chen's foot and said, Let go of me. Are you trying to suffocate me? You're peeing on the bed. Xiao Chen said seriously. Oh my God, you don't think it's dirty, but I do. This wasn't the first time something like this had happened. Xiao Qian had completely changed from the cold and aloof Ninth Emperors to this stupid person. Jingyu couldn't accept this huge change. Who could tell her what was going on? On the 3rd day, Jingyu was already exhausted. The first thing she did when she opened her eyes was cry out. She knew that she was about to endure this inhumane torture again. However, the strange thing was that Xiao Chun actually got up on his own. Jingyu blinked and looked at Xiao Chun, who was silently putting on his clothes. For the past 3 days, he had been pestering her to help him put on his clothes. Today, he actually got up and put on his own clothes. Jingyu blinked and carefully looked at Xiao Chen's expressionless face and his pair of deep eyes. His sober actions didn't have any other meaning. Did this mean that Xiao Chun had turned back into the Ninth Emperors? Xiao Chun? Jingyu called out uncertainly. What's the matter? Xiao Chun buckled his belt and looked at Jingyu in confusion. I'm fine, haha. Jingyu giggled and looked at Xiao Chun, who was standing there with his tall and straight body in a suit. I'm going out for a while. I'll be back later tonight. Xiao Chun said calmly and turned to leave. Jingyu was stunned. She looked at Xiao Chun walking out of the room in a daze. She only regained her senses when she heard Yin Xiao's call. Imperial concubine, the Ninth Emperors. He recovered? Yin Xiao blinked and looked at Jingyu. He seems to have recovered? Jingyu swallowed her saliva. What the hell was going on? There was no scientific evidence to explain this. Jingyu was once again certain that Xiao Chun was possessed. Yin Xiao, what day is it today? Jingyu, who was putting on her clothes, suddenly paused and turned to look at Yin Xiao. Today is the 10th of the 7th month. Yin Xiao blinked and looked at Jingyu. It's only been a few days since the 7th and Imperial concubine has already forgotten the date? Oh, the 10th. Jingyu's eyes flashed with a hint of deep thought. The restaurant and brothel were both in the midst of renovations. Jingyu didn't have classes, so she went out all day to help with the renovations. Xiao Chen disappeared for 2 or 3 days after he went out that day. When he came back, he was the same as usual. Jingyu had figured it out. This Xiao Chun would disappear every time the 10th came. Previously, she didn't see him for a day and a night. Now, she didn't see him for a few days. Looking at it, could it be that Xiao Chun went out for a rendezvous? Jingyu was horrified when she thought of this. Could it be that she was disturbing Xiao Chun in the Wangfu, so Xiao Chun went out? Looking at it, she had to quickly earn money to build her own house and move out. She didn't want to disturb Xiao Chun. The days passed very quickly. Unknowingly, It was already the end of the 8th month. Jingyu's renovations were nearing completion. Now, they just had to wait for the furniture to be ready and move in before they could open for business. Jingyu rarely had time to relax in the Wangfu, so she was very bored. Chapter 185. Thinking that she hadn't seen Jian for a long time, she brought Xing to a mountain outside the city. This place had been completely taken over by Xiao Chun, so there was no one on the mountain, so it was quiet. If there were many people coming and going, wouldn't Jian and Feng be scared to death if they saw them? It wouldn't be good to cause a panic. Ayaya, this is a good place. Jingyu looked at the mountain in front of her that wasn't inferior to the Roman forest in the slightest, and nodded her head in satisfaction. Jingyu stood in the middle of the mountain forest and narrowed her eyes to look at the surroundings. Her eyes were full of smiles as she looked around and asked Xing, "Did you guys place Jian here?" "Yes." Xing slowly nodded his head. Jingyu narrowed her eyes and smiled. She raised her hand to her mouth and blew a clear and melodious whistle. The whistle seemed to have a rhythm, and Xing wasn't unfamiliar with it. The first time he entered the Roman forest with Jingyu and encountered an ambush, Jingyu had also used this whistle to summon the 2 gray wolves. Sure enough, after Jingyu blew her whistle, they heard a rustling sound coming from the forest. Jingyu's eyes revealed a smile as she identified the source of the sound. Turning her head to look, she saw a gray wolf with white fur dashing out of the dense forest. Aya! Jingyu's lips had just curled into a smile when she was pounced on by the gray wolf's huge body. Feng, good job, you've outrun Jian. Jingyu smiled as she rubbed Feng's fur, allowing Feng to intimately lick her cheek. Oh, whoa. Another figure dashed out and pushed Jian aside, also licking Jingyu's other cheek. Jingyu was amused by the two and laughed. She dodged the 2 heads and sat up to stroke their fur. After not seeing them for a few months, these 2 big guys seemed to have returned to their previous robust state. From the looks of it, the 2 of you are having a good time here. Jingyu sat on one side, while Xing stood far away. Seeing Jingyu talking to the 2 gray wolves intimately, he had a strange feeling in his heart. He always felt that when facing animals, Jingyu treated them like her own family. The gentleness that came from within was something that he didn't feel when facing other people. This thought made Xing feel a little strange. Jingyu led the 2 gray wolves, Silver Arrow and Silver Wind, to run and jump in the forest to their heart's content. She swung her arms between the branches. It had been a long time since she had exercised her muscles and bones. The days of the rich really made people lazy. Jingyu swung her sore arms and frowned. Looks like I have to train more in the future. Jingyu pinched her small body. If she hadn't exercised her muscles and bones for a long time, if she encountered another assassination, her reaction speed would really be insufficient. The sun gradually set. Jingyu accompanied Jian and Silver Wind until the sky had darkened a little. Only then did she stand up and leave. In a low voice, she told the 2 wolves to stay here and that she would come often in the future. Jian and Silver Wind were obviously very reluctant to part with her. They chased after Jingyu's footsteps until they reached the foot of the mountain. Watching Jingyu leave, they let out a long and distant howl. In the prince's mansion, Jingyu was about to return to her courtyard after returning from outside the city when she suddenly thought of looking for Xiao Chen to talk about the courtyard that had been sealed by the soldiers. She turned and went to Xiao Chen's study. When she walked into the courtyard, she saw Xing Yi and another person in black standing at the door of the study. Chapter 186. She had just walked into the courtyard when she saw Xing Yi standing at the door of the study with a man in black that she had never seen before. Jingyu paused in her steps, slightly surprised. From the looks of it, there seemed to be a guest in Xiao Chen's room. Imperial concubine. Xing Yi was clearly surprised to see Jingyu arrive, but he immediately bowed slightly. Xiao Chen is busy? Jingyu blinked and asked. Yes, Master is currently discussing official matters with His Highness the Crown Prince. If Imperial concubine is urgently looking for him, this subordinate will go in and report. Xing Yi pursed his lips. Crown Prince? Jingyu was slightly surprised. She frowned slightly and said, Forget it. It's not a big matter that I'm looking for him. I'll wait for Xiao Chan to finish his business before I go look for him. Jingyu said as she nodded slightly at Xing-yi, then turned to leave. All right, this matter is settled. Just as Jingyu turned to leave, the tightly shut door of the study suddenly opened. A thin figure appeared in front of the door, followed by Xiao Qin's figure. Jingyu was slightly surprised to see the two people who had walked out. This is... The thin man's face was sickly pale, but his dark eyes were not cloudy. His thin and weak body looked like it could be blown away by the wind at any time. It was already August, but the man was still wearing a cloak, as if he couldn't stand the cold. Jingyu looked at the man's fine clothes, and the dragon jade pendant at his waist was even more eye-catching. She didn't need to guess to know that the sickly man in front of her was the current crown prince, Xiao Yuling. Your Highness the Crown Prince. Jingyu was stunned for a moment, then curtsied. The etiquette she had learned in the etiquette school was not for nothing. Xiao Yuling was slightly taken aback by the way Jingyu bowed. A glint flashed across his dark eyes. Looking at Second Xing, who was standing beside Jingyu, he naturally recognized him. He was the 9th royal uncle's personal guard. For him to stand so respectfully beside a woman, and for this woman to appear in the palace, this person's identity was almost obvious. This must be the 9th imperial concubine chosen by the 9th emperors, Miss Jingyu? Xiao Yuling looked at Jingyu with narrowed eyes, a faint smile on his lips.
Yes.
Jingyu blinked and nodded. When did you come back? Xiao Qian stepped forward and looked at Jingyu with a gentle gaze. I just came back. Jingyu turned to look at Xiao Qian, then looked at Xiao Yuling and said, I won't disturb you since you are busy. I will return to the Lotus Garden first. With that, Jingyu smiled at the two of them and turned to leave. No need. Send the Crown Prince back to the palace. I have something to tell you. Xiao Qian shook his head and turned to stand beside Jingyu. He very naturally took Jingyu's hand and said, Huh. Jingyu was slightly surprised. She didn't feel that there was anything wrong with Xiao Qian holding her hand. However, Xiao Yuling was shocked by the scene in front of him. It wasn't as if there hadn't been rumors in the palace about the love between the 9th emperors and the chosen 9th imperial concubine. He just took it as a passing remark and didn't take it to heart. From what he knew, the 9th emperors wouldn't care about anyone. Therefore, he never thought that he would one day see the 9th emperors treat someone so gently. And it was a woman. Yes, I should return to the palace. Xiao Yuling's eyes were filled with deep meaning. He smiled at Jingyu and Xiao Qian, then left with the help of the people beside him. Jingyu looked at Xiao Yuling's weak footsteps and frowned slightly. It seemed that the crown prince was seriously ill. Chapter 187. Jingyu looked at Xiao Yuling's unsteady footsteps and frowned slightly. It looked like the crown prince was seriously ill. Xiao Qian, the crown prince still looks very young. Why is he so ill? Can it not be treated? After Jingyu and Xiao Qian sent Xiao Yuling off, they strolled toward the lotus garden. Jingyu stood next to Xiao Qian. Her small hand was tightly held in Xiao Qian's hand. Xing-yi and Xing-er followed behind them. It's an illness that came from the mother's womb. It's not a matter of whether or not it can be treated, but whether or not you want to be treated, Xiao Qian said with a faint smile. When Xiao Qian finished speaking, Jingyu was clearly stunned. She tilted her head and looked at Xiao Qian's profile. Confusion flashed through her eyes. As expected, the matters of the imperial family were always so tangled and complicated. As an outsider, it was best for her not to interfere too much. That's right, Xiao Qian. Jingyu paused and said, the residence I mentioned to you last time, is there a way to get it? Yes, after the August hunt, the deed to the residence will be sent to the prince's residence. Xiao Qian nodded and replied calmly. Hunt? What hunt? She had been excited when she heard that the residence was in her hands. However, when she heard Xiao Qian mention a hunt, she was stunned and looked suspiciously at Xiao Qian. This is also what I wanted to talk to you about. Xiao Qian tilted his head and looked at Jingyu. In 3 days, it will be the August hunt. The emperor and all the princes and concubines will leave the palace on this day to hunt and have fun at the imperial hunting grounds. It can be considered as a way to improve their relationship. They really have nothing better to do. Jingyu's lips twitched. I'm afraid that the hunt this time will not be peaceful. Xiao Qian took a deep breath, looked at Jingyu, and said, the emperor specifically asked me to bring you along. Xing Er will protect you. Crown Prince, did you come here because of this? Jing Yu narrowed her eyes at Xiao Chun. Yes. Xiao Chun nodded and said, Don't worry, I won't put you in danger. Oh. Jing Yu arched her eyebrows and smiled. Her eyes flashed with a different light. She squinted at Xiao Chun and said, Xiao Chun, I'm not a weak woman who doesn't know anything. When it comes to killing people, I'm no weaker than your subordinates. Xiao Chun was slightly startled when he heard this. He lowered his head to look at Jing Yu, who was looking up at him and giggling. His expression changed slightly, and the corners of his mouth curled up into a gentle smile. He raised his hand to pinch Jing Yu's tender cheeks and said, I know. That's why I'm even more worried. Aya, I won't cause you any trouble. Jing Yu slapped away Xiao Chun's hand and said with her cheeks puffed up, Is that so? Xiao Chun was clearly unhappy and said, Helly and Theo will also be going to this hunt. Him? If he's going, then let him go. Jing Yu rolled her eyes and said, I'll ask him if he killed my Zonghua. Xiao Chun coldly snorted and said, I'll help you ask. You're not allowed to contact Helly and Theo. Hey, I can't even talk. Jing Yu immediately protested. No, Xiao Chun said firmly. This damned man. How could he be so overbearing? Jing Yu gritted her teeth and looked at Xiao Chun. Why didn't she realize that Xiao Chun was completely unreasonable and overbearing before? The August hunt was a grand event for the imperial family. Early in the morning, news came that the emperor had left the palace with the empress and the imperial concubine. Jing Yu also woke up early in the morning and followed Xiao Chun to greet them. Finally, she followed the emperor's procession and headed towards the sharp mountain outside the city. Chapter 188. The forest here stretched for hundreds of miles and was enclosed by the royal family. It was named the Royal Hunting Ground. Every year, during major festivals such as birthdays, the Royal Hunting Ground would be opened for the royal family to hunt. Every August, the royal family would hold a small-scale hunt. So sleepy. Jing Yu yawned as she lay on the soft couch in the carriage. Jing Yu was dragged out of bed by Xiao Chun early in the morning and barely managed to stay awake. Now that she was back in the carriage, Jing Yu no longer tried to hide and lay on the soft couch drowsily. Xiao Chun sat by the side with his chin propped up and a faint smile appeared in his eyes when he saw Jing Yu like this. It's still early when we reach the hunting ground. You should sleep for a while. Xiao Chun said faintly. Okay. Jing Yu replied drowsily and really fell asleep. When they reached the peak, Jing Yu finally woke up contentedly. She got off the carriage and looked at the magnificent mountain. Jing Yu's gaze fell on a palace at the top of the mountain. Looking at the building, Jing Yu frowned in confusion. Isn't there a palace there? Why are they setting up camp at the foot of the mountain? Jing Yu tilted her head and asked, That's the palace where the ceremony is held. The hunting ground isn't there. Xiao Chun followed Jing Yu's gaze and explained faintly. I see. Jing Yu nodded, not fully understanding. She didn't think too much about this issue. When Xing Yi came to report that the tents had been set up and they could go in to rest, Jing Yu was restless. She had already rested enough during the entire journey. Xing Er, did General Shangguan come this time? Jing Yu looked sideways at Xing Er and asked. General Shangguan is the accompanying general for this trip. Of course, he's here to ensure everyone's safety. Xiao Chun continued, Your little sister is also here. If you're bored, you can go find her before the hunt starts. Really? Jing Yu's eyes lit up. Okay, Xing Er, bring the imperial concubine along. Be careful. Xiao Chun reminded and watched Jing Yu happily walk away with Xing Er before turning to enter the tent. Jing Yu walked along and nodded in amazement when she saw that the tents were almost set up. There was strength in numbers. Today was just a small gathering and the hunt would start tomorrow. Jing Yu was looking for Shangguan Linglan. Third brother. Look, fifth brother only knows how to bully me. From afar, Jing Yu could see Shangguan Linglan sitting on the ground in a sorry state, glaring angrily at a handsome man with a smile on his face. Looking at the appearance of the man, she could tell that he was only 15 or 16 years old. You can't blame fifth brother for being inferior. Jing Yu had seen the person who spoke before. Shangguan Minheo was Shangguan Linglan's third brother. At this moment, The circle of soldiers seemed to be in the middle of a fight. Looking at Shangguan Linglan's appearance, it was obvious that he was defeated. He sat on the ground and refused to get up as he complained to Shangguan Minheo. You're all bullying me. I'm going to tell father. Shangguan Linglan patted the dust off her body and stood up. She raised her chin and said proudly, Don't. I'll beat you back. The handsome man's expression changed when he heard Shangguan Linglan's words. He quickly blocked Shangguan Linglan's path and said nervously. Chapter 189. Look at you, Shangguan Minheo said sarcastically. Based on my father's temper, you can't get away with being an accomplice. The man didn't take Shangguan Minheo's sarcasm to heart and spat out a sentence in disdain. Shangguan Minheo's expression immediately changed. It's so lively. Jingyu walked over slowly. Everyone was slightly stunned and turned their heads to look. When they saw that it was a little girl, they all had a puzzled look in their eyes. Jingyu, you're here too. Shangguan Linglan saw Jingyu and his face was filled with joy. He quickly ran over to Jingyu. I came with Xiao Chun. I heard that you were here, so I came over. Jingyu smiled and said, Are you guys here? Are you having a martial arts competition? What martial arts competition? They're bullying me just because they're older. Shangguan Linglan said with a look of accusation. Shangguan Linglan's words made Shangguan Minheo and the handsome man slightly embarrassed. They touched the tip of their nose and didn't say anything. Shangguan Linglan then took Jingyu's hand and said, Let me introduce you. This is my third brother, Shangguan Minheo, and this is my fifth brother, Shangguan Jinghao. Greetings, brothers. Jingyu smiled and curtsied. So that handsome man was Shangguan Linglan's fifth brother. This is my good sister, Jingyu. You're not allowed to bully her. Shangguan Linglan raised his chin arrogantly and said, So it's Sister Jingyu. I've often heard Linglan talk about you. Today, I finally get to meet you. Jingyu smiled. His bright and innocent smile made Jingyu's eyes light up. She didn't say anything bad about me, right? Jingyu stared at Shangguan Jinghao and said, Hey, do I look like the kind of person who would speak ill of you? Shangguan Linglan was immediately unhappy. He glared at Jingyu and said angrily, Yes. Jingyu nodded seriously. Ha. Shangguan Jinghao laughed out loud when he saw Shangguan Linglan's deflated look. Shangguan Minheo's eyes also had a hint of a smile, but he didn't laugh out loud. Others might not know Jingyu's identity, but he knew that she was the 9th imperial concubine chosen by the 9th emperors. Shangguan Linglan casually exchanged a few words with Shangguan Minheo before pulling Jingyu out of the tent, ignoring these uncouth men. Why are you here? I remember that the young ladies of the imperial family aren't allowed to come, right? Jingyu and Shangguan Linglan walked on the road. Jingyu turned to look at Shangguan Linglan and asked, Hee. Shangguan Linglan giggled and said, I only came here because of my father. Mother has a good relationship with the Empress Dowager, so she had this privilege and agreed to let my father bring me here to broaden my horizons. I see. Jingyu nodded slightly. Moreover, my father's duty is to protect the emperor, so he let my two brothers come along to protect me. Shangguan Linglan spread his hands and said, Isn't it just a hunt? What's there to protect? I'm not that kind of weak person. Shangguan Linglan pouted unhappily. Obviously, being protected by others made her feel a lot of restrictions. That's not necessarily true. What if something unexpected happens? Jingyu frowned and said, It's best to be careful. What's more, the Shangguan family only has one precious daughter. Let's not talk about me. Let's talk about you. Shangguan Linglan and Jingyu sat on the grass outside the tent. Chapter 190. Shangguan Linglan played with the weed in his hand as he turned to look at Jingyu and asked, I haven't seen you for so long. Where did you go? Hee. I want to do something big. Jingyu replied excitedly when she heard Shangguan Linglan's question. Something big? What is it? Shangguan Linglan's eyes lit up as he looked at Jingyu with a burning gaze. I can't tell you now. You'll know in September. Jingyu smiled mysteriously and refused to say anything. Shangguan Linglan tried to pry more information out of Jingyu's mouth, but he couldn't get anything out of her, so he had to give up. After a night of rest, the next day's hunt finally arrived as everyone had been anticipating. In front of the hunting grounds, everyone was dressed in capable riding attire. Beside them, their horses were equipped with bows and swords. There was a lunch banquet before the hunt, and everyone who had come to participate in the hunt was gathered together. There were tables and chairs set up on the spacious grassland, and everyone sat down. Jingyu sat beside Xiao Chun, and the person sitting across from her was Hellion Theo. "Little beauty, we meet again." Hellion Theo and Jingyu looked at each other from afar. Hellion Theo's beauty mark caused everyone to pale in comparison to Hellion Theo's smile. How could a man be so beautiful? It really made people feel ashamed of their own inferiority. Hee hee. Jingyu laughed dryly and didn't dare to respond to Hellion Theo's words. The reason was simple. Didn't you see the terrifying aura of this big Buddha beside you? Jingyu wanted to curl herself into a ball. She didn't do anything. She wasn't the one who talked to Hellion Theo. It was Hellion Theo who talked to her. Jingyu wanted to cry but had no tears. Xiao Chun stared gloomily at Hellion Theo's beautiful face and snorted coldly. The Emperor, the Empress, and the noble consort appeared together. Below them were the Princess Royal and her husband, Xiao Weiming. Jingyu had seen them before. Sitting beside the Princess Royal was Countess Xiling. Since Xiling was here, Countess Leong was naturally here as well. Not bad. They were all gathered together. Jingyu casually glanced around and saw Shangguan Linglan sitting beside Shangguan Minheo. The two looked at each other and smiled. And Jinglang's seat's position. Looking at Jinglang's seat, it was slightly lower. Jinglang was a general of the three armies. Logically speaking, his seat shouldn't be so far behind. However, Jinglang's seat was slightly lower. From the looks of it, he should be representing the Prime Minister manner. Could it be that Jing Zhan was really starting to meddle with the Prime Minister's estate? Jingyu slowly retracted her gaze and listened to the Emperor speak. Sitting diagonally across from Jingyu were the second prince, Xiao Jingran, and the third prince, Xiao Xiangqing. They were talking with the Emperor about the hunt this time. Same old rules. Whoever can hunt the most prey in this hunt will be rewarded with this overlord bow. Xiao Yi stood up. His soft armor made him look particularly valiant. He pointed to a bow with smooth lines and a murderous and majestic aura that was placed on a shelf. Ha ha ha. Imperial Father has even taken out his most treasured bow. Looks like he wants us brothers to show off our skills without holding anything back. Xiao Jingran's expression turned solemn as he stared at the overlord bow placed on the shelf with a burning gaze. Imperial Brother took out such a tempting prize. It seems like this king should also work hard this time. Xiao Qin's indifferent voice sounded. Chapter 191. Xiao Jingran glanced over and their eyes met. The sparks in the air caused the atmosphere to become tense even before the hunt had begun. Ha ha ha, let's not waste any more words. We announced the start of the hunt. Xiao Yi waved his hand and the sound of drums rang out. Everyone stood up from their seats. So many people. Jingyu sat on the horse and looked at the people getting on their horses one after another. She suddenly grinned. Looking at this situation, everyone's so-called victory was actually not for the Emperor's overlord bow. Behind this bow should be the position of Crown Prince. One side supported the Crown Prince while the other side supported the second prince. This hunt was a hidden battlefield. Be good and stay by my side. Don't run around. Xiao Chun was dressed in an ink-black brocade robe as he stood on his horse. He narrowed his eyes at the forest in front of him as he spoke to Jingyu. Oh. Jingyu replied unwillingly and obediently sat on her horse. The people who had entered the forest had all spread out. It looked like they were going to hunt for their own prey. However, it was unknown whether they had actually gathered in the forest to work together. Jingyu followed Xiao Chun and watched as Xing Er and Xing Yi worked hard to hunt. Her mouth twitched in speechlessness. She actually wanted to see Xiao Chun do this himself. For some reason, she felt that being Xiao Chun's subordinate was also a tough job. Let's rest for a while. Deep in the forest, Xiao Chun and Jingyu stopped in their tracks and sat on the ground to drink water. Xing Er and Xing Yi were observing their surroundings. Although there were rarely any large creatures in this hunting ground, it was always good to be vigilant. What kind of hunt is this? It's so boring. Jingyu leaned to one side in boredom. She looked at the rabbits, deer, and other harmless animals. She really did not have the slightest interest in them. She had lived in the forest since she was young and did not find these things novel. From the looks of it, it shouldn't be a big deal. Xiao Chen exhaled, stood up and said, I'm just here to join. If you're bored, you can walk around and then go back. Jingyu shrugged indifferently and agreed. Everyone rested for a while, counted the prey, and handed it to the soldiers behind them. They prepared to stroll back to the camp. However, just as Jingyu was about to mount her horse, she suddenly heard a distant roar. What's that sound? Jingyu's expression changed. She was no stranger to this sound. She often heard it in the forest. It was a tiger's roar. There are tigers in the hunting grounds? Jingyu turned to look at Xiao Chun, whose expression was equally solemn. No, this place has been cordoned off. The animals that have been let in have no attack power. It's even more impossible for tigers to appear. Xiao Chen's expression slowly became serious. It seems that something has happened. Xiao Chen mounted his horse and urged the accompanying soldiers to immediately go back and ask for reinforcements. He called for interrogation one, Jingyu, and the others to head towards the place where the tiger's roar was coming from. There were a lot of people entering the forest this time, but if they were to encounter this tiger, it would probably be a disaster. Xingyi, which direction is the emperor? Xiao Chen's expression slowly darkened as he turned to ask Xingyi. The emperor entered the forest from the east. He's not here. Xingyi replied in a low voice. Although Xiao Yi had the protection of the accompanying general, Shangguan Hongwan, when he entered the forest, it was still very worrying. Nothing could happen to Xiao Yi. Chapter 192. Jingyu and Xiao Chun quickly approached the source of the tiger's roar. As they got closer, they could hear the tiger's roar and the sound of swords clashing. It seemed like a fight had broken out. When Jingyu and Xiao Chun arrived, they were stunned by the scene in front of them. Fuck, is this the tiger's den? Jingyu's face was filled with shock as she looked at the three groups of people who were locked in a fierce battle with three huge tigers. Her face immediately turned green and the corners of her mouth twitched. Why are there so many tigers? Xing Yi and Xing Er's faces were also very ugly. The three groups of people fighting were Xiao Jingran's group, Shangguan Minheo's group, and Jinglang's group. These three groups of people were each entangled with a tiger and were fighting with their lives on the line. Master, what should we do? Xing Yi turned to look at Xiao Chun and asked. Go and help. Xiao Chun took a deep breath and dismounted from his horse. He drew his sword and headed towards them. Xiao Chun, go and help Ling Lan. Jingyu suddenly said, Xing Yi, you guys go and help Xiao Jingran. Be careful. Xiao Chun took a deep breath and nodded. He moved his feet and quickly headed towards Shangguan Minheo's side. With Xiao Chen's participation in the battle, the situation was obviously suppressed. Jingyu slowly pulled out her dagger and a cold glint flashed across her eyes. When she saw that Jinglang was covered in blood, she became angry and quickly rushed over. Jingyu's sudden attack stunned Jinglang for a long time. When he saw that it was Jingyu, his eyes were filled with shock. What are you waiting for? Let's end this quickly. Jingyu shouted coldly. The dagger in her hand flew and left wounds on the tiger's body. Jinglang suddenly came back to his senses and fought with the tiger again. After fighting for a while, he didn't cause any fatal injuries. Instead, the wounds left by the dagger completely enraged the tiger. Roar! Like a chain reaction, the three tigers were on the verge of going berserk. The pressure on the three groups suddenly increased. Damned beast! Jingyu was knocked to the ground by the tiger and felt a dull pain in her chest. When Jinglang saw the injured Jingyu, his dark eyes suddenly flashed with violence. He wielded the sword in his hand like a big knife and actually fought with the tiger with brute force. Cough. Jingyu covered her chest and coughed. Her eyes slightly narrowed as she looked at the tiger entangled with Jinglang. You're looking for death. Jingyu slowly stood up. An unknown force seemed to be slowly stirring in her body. Her pitch-black eyes shrank and turned from black to dark green. In an instant, Jingyu stomped her foot and charged towards the ferocious tiger. Pung! The force of the impact was so great that the tiger slid 3 steps back. Jinglang looked at Jingyu's sudden explosive force in horror. He turned his head to look at Jingyu, but the moment he looked over, his body stiffened as if he had been struck by lightning. He was stunned on the spot. Strange pupils. That pair of dark green eyes were burning with a wild, beast-like aura. That small and weak fist seemed to be as heavy as 1,000 pounds of gold when it smashed into the tiger's body. It smashed the tiger to the point where it could not resist at all, leaving only a low growl of pain. Huh! Jingyu leaped up, clenched her hand into a fist, and slammed it down on the tiger's head. The force of the collision caused the tiger to fall to the ground. It knelt on the ground and no longer had any strength to fight. The tiger's golden eyes met Jingyu's green eyes. The golden eyes suddenly shrank, and with a whimper, the tiger did not dare to move. Chapter 193. Phew! Jingyu saw the ferocious tiger lying on the ground, shivering. Only then did she slowly withdraw her fist and stand up. You! Jinglang looked at the tiger lying on the ground and found his voice after a long time. Jingyu suddenly turned around and stared at Jinglang with her green eyes. Jinglang's body trembled. He felt as if the person standing in front of him was not a person, but a powerful and terrifying beast. There was not the slightest bit of warmth in those cold eyes. Jinglang's body stiffened, and he suddenly tightened his grip on the long sword in his hand. He saw Jingyu's green eyes darken and finally turn black. Jinglang saw Jingyu's eyes turn black and slowly let out a sigh of relief. Before he could do anything, he saw Jingyu slowly close her eyes and collapse. Jingyu! Jinglang was shocked and rushed over to catch Jingyu's unconscious body. Jingyu had just fainted when the reinforcements finally arrived. The other 2 ferocious tigers were also subdued and tied up. When they saw that no one was injured, they let out a sigh of relief. That was until Jinglang ran over with Jingyu in his arms. What happened to her? Xiaochun looked at the unconscious Jingyu, and his face suddenly changed. He was furious and stared at Jinglang as if he was going to kill him in the next second. I don't know. She seems to have fallen asleep. Jinglang looked at Xiaochun and said with a frown, Fallen asleep? Xiaochun's breathing paused slightly. He carefully looked at Jingyu and found that Jingyu was not injured. She had indeed fallen asleep. He slowly let out a sigh of relief and raised his arm to take Jingyu. However, Jinglang reflexively hugged Jingyu tightly. Xiaochun narrowed his eyes and looked at Jinglang with a cold and warning gaze. Take good care of her. Jinglang's body trembled. After struggling for a while, he slowly let go of his hand and looked at Xiaochun carefully holding Jingyu in his arms. He stared at Xiaochun and said, I will. Xiaochun responded coldly, turned around and left with Jingyu in his arms, leaving Jinglang standing in the same place, looking at Xiaochun who was gradually disappearing with a complicated expression. The pair of green eyes in his mind could not be erased no matter how hard he tried. In the end, the winner of this group hunt was neither Xiaochun nor Xiao Jingran. It was Helian Xiao. Because of the sudden appearance of 3 fierce tigers in the hunting grounds, which almost led to the loss of lives, Emperor Xiaoyi flew into a rage. He ordered a strict investigation into the cause and effect of this matter. The final result was that the iron fence around the hunting ground was loose and allowed the ferocious beasts to enter. It was because the guards of the hunting ground were lazy and did not check. Clearly, the end of this matter was that unlucky guy was sent to prison and beheaded. When Jingyu woke up again, the first thing she saw was her familiar bed canopy. She blinked in confusion. Jingyu propped up her sore body and sat up. She twisted her neck to see that she had actually come to the Wang Fu. You're awake. Jingyu was just thinking about what had happened when she saw a tall and imposing figure walk into the room. Xiaochun. Jingyu rubbed her groggy head and called out. Looking at her appearance, she seemed to have slept too much. Eat something. Xiaochun put a bowl of soup in his hand on the table. Looking at Jingyu who got off the bed and walked over, he frowned slightly and said, Why did you suddenly fall asleep and sleep for an entire day and night? Chapter 194. Why did you suddenly fall asleep? Moreover, you slept for an entire day and night. Dasha, I slept for so long? Jingyu swallowed the soup in her mouth and looked at Xiao Chun in shock. Clearly, Jingyu didn't know that she had fallen asleep. Xiao Chun saw that Jingyu's expression didn't seem to be fake. He pursed his lips and fell into deep thought. Maybe I didn't rest well in the tent, Jingyu mumbled. Even she didn't believe the explanation she gave, let alone Xiao Chen. Fortunately, Xiao Chen didn't ask any more questions. He just stared at Jingyu with a pair of scrutinizing eyes that made her scalp tingle. The hunting incident came to an end. Jingyu and Xiao Chen tacitly didn't mention the hunting incident again. After the hunting incident, Jingyu's life event was finally coming. The restaurant that she had painstakingly renovated was finally going to open for business. However, before the opening day, there was still a very, very important thing to do, and that was to cook. Jingyu could be considered to have put in a lot of effort. Although the dishes made in ancient times were delicious, people were particular about novelty. Jingyu was someone who had transmigrated from the 21st century, so no matter what, she had to bring modern dishes to greater heights. However, Jingyu wasn't good at cooking. Regarding this, not to mention others, even Jingyu herself knew what she was capable of. Xiao Chun. On the bed in Lotus Garden, Jingyu was lying on the bed and playing with Xiao Chen's ink-black hair. She called out Xiao Chen's name with a smile. Xiao Chun was half lying on the bed, flipping through a book in his hand. When he heard Jingyu's call, he lightly snorted and didn't say anything else. Can I borrow someone from you? Jingyu carefully asked as she twirled Xiao Chen's hair with her fingers. Xiao Chun still responded faintly, as if he hadn't woken up yet. I want the prince's residence's chef to cook for my restaurant, Jingyu said with a smile. As soon as she finished speaking, she saw Xiao Chen's hand that was flipping through the book suddenly stop. He slowly moved the book away and looked at Jingyu with his deep, pitch-black eyes. You said you could let me open the restaurant. You can't go back on your word. Jingyu's hair stood on end when she saw Xiao Chen's eyes. She immediately jumped up in fright and pouted her lips as she spoke to Xiao Chen. It's one thing to let you open the restaurant, but you actually have designs on the prince's residence's chef? Xiao Chen slightly narrowed his eyes. When he spat out these words, it sounded like he was gnashing his teeth. Jingyu fiercely shuddered. We have quite a few chefs. Just give me one. Just one will do. Jingyu ingratiatingly pulled on Xiao Chen's arm and shook it as she said, Besides, there are only a few of us in the prince's residence. Why do we need so many chefs? Chapter 195. Really? You're the best. Jingyu's eyes lit up. Oh my. Acting spoiled was indeed effective. But Jingyu's happiness had just risen when Xiao Chen's but caused Jingyu's entire body to stiffen. There was still a but. But? What? Jingyu swallowed her saliva and looked towards Xiao Chen as she asked. I can lend you the chef, but I want you to make a trip to the palace with me tomorrow, Xiao Chen said indifferently. What? The palace again? Jingyu instantly jumped up. Towards the palace, Jingyu absolutely detested it. Xiao Chen raised his eyebrows in agreement. Why are we going to the palace this time? Jingyu's shoulders drooped dispiritedly. For her restaurant, wasn't it just going to the palace? I want to bring you to meet someone, Xiao Chen said as he narrowed his eyes. Meet who? Jingyu blinked her eyes and asked. Xiao Chen raised his hand and put down the book in his hand. He looked towards Jingyu and said, You'll know when we get there tomorrow. Go to sleep now. Hey, if you don't tell me who I'm meeting, I haven't agreed to go yet. Jingyu protested, but Xiao Chen reached out and pulled her into his embrace. By her ear, Xiao Chen said indifferently, If you want the restaurant to continue operating, then listen to me obediently. Jingyu wanted to cry but had no tears. Was this really a negotiation? This was clearly a threat. He was forcing her. Where was the justice? The next morning, Jingyu was dragged out of bed by Yin Xiao to wash up and dress up. However, when she was choosing her clothes, Xiao Chen suddenly said that there was no need to be grand and that anything was fine. This was the first time Jingyu heard that she could dress casually when entering the palace. Everyone living in the palace was of high status. If she was reprimanded for doing something wrong and dressing up, she could be sent to the disciplinary hall at any moment. Jingyu was very afraid of this, so even though Xiao Chun said to dress casually, Jingyu still did her best to dress up. The prince's residence's carriage drove into the palace without any obstructions. Jingyu sat in the carriage, her heart full of doubts. There were a few times when she wanted to ask Xiao Chun where they were going, but when she saw that Xiao Chun had his eyes closed and didn't want to talk, she didn't open her mouth. After traveling for a long time, Jingyu lifted the curtain to see where they were. However, she realized that the further they went, the more remote it became. It wasn't the way to the main palace at all. Jingyu was even more puzzled. After traveling for a while, the carriage stopped. This place. Jingyu looked at the dilapidated palace in front of her in astonishment. She didn't expect that there would be such a place in the palace. Could this be the legendary Cold Palace? Come in. Xiao Chun held Jingyu's hand as he pushed open the rusty palace door and slowly stepped inside. The outside of the palace door looked dilapidated, but the scenery inside the palace door made Jingyu blink her eyes in amazement. There were many herbs, sundries, and cloth drying inside. The floor was very clean, and even the weeds weren't cleaned very carefully. Jingyu faintly smelled the fragrance of food. She raised her head to look at Xiao Chen and found that the usually cold Xiao Chen actually revealed a smile. That gentle smile stunned Jingyu for a long time, her heart full of shock. Wet nurse. Xiao Chen smiled as he walked inside. Jingyu looked sideways and vaguely saw the figure standing at the bottom of the stone steps. Jingyu smiled and said, I will come to see you often in the future. Xiao Chun will be very happy. Good, good, good. The woman held Jingyu's hand with a gratified expression. Standing in front of the palace gate, she watched Xiao Chun and Jingyu's carriage gradually go away. When she could no longer see them, she sighed slightly, turned around, and entered the palace gate and closed the gate. In the carriage, Jingyu still had a faint smile on her face. Xiao Chun slowly breathed a sigh of relief and turned to Jingyu and said, Sorry, I took you to see my wet nurse without your consent? Huh, I didn't agree. Jingyu looked at Xiao Chan and said, I didn't expect you to be so naughty when you were young. It was worth coming to the palace to hear the interesting story of the famous 9th emperors of Tokyo. Chapter 197. I didn't think that you would be so mischievous when you were young. To be able to hear about the famous 9th emperors of Tokyo, this trip to the palace was worth it. Dash. Xiao Chun was silent for a moment before he laughed out loud. He raised his hand and pulled Jingyu into his embrace. His expression was gentle as he said, Thank you, Jingyu. You're welcome. Jingyu was caught off guard by Xiao Chen's sudden hug. Her cheeks were slightly red and she stuttered. Her heart was beating rapidly, making Jingyu feel slightly uneasy. When your restaurant opens, I want to be the first customer. Xiao Chen slowly let go of Jingyu and said with a smile, No problem. Jingyu waved her hand and said with a smile, Eat as much as you want. I guarantee that you've never tried the food in my restaurant before. Oh, is that so? Xiao Chun narrowed his eyes and said, Then I'll have to properly taste it. At the beginning of September, Jingyu's restaurant opened as she wished. She gave her restaurant a very tacky name. Because of this, Xiao Chen disliked it for a long time. However, Jingyu refused to change it no matter what he said. However, for someone like Jingyu who didn't know how to write, it was impossible for her to get the nomination done. Therefore, the restaurant's name was written by Xiao Chun himself. Jingyu excitedly went to carve the name into a signboard. The signboard was hung high in front of the restaurant. On the signboard, there were 3 words written in flamboyant calligraphy. Come if you have money. Before the restaurant opened, advertisements were posted all over the street. News of this mysterious restaurant was spread all over the streets and alleys. Originally, the opening of this restaurant wasn't a big deal, but with the advertisements all over the street, it was hard for people to not know about it. Especially the words written on a piece of paper. For the first 3 days of the opening, all meals and drinks will be free. Looking at the pictures of food drawn on the paper, it was simply a novel thing that he had never seen before. and the names were even more strange. It immediately attracted everyone's attention. Everyone was looking forward to the opening of the restaurant. They all had the idea of eating for free. On the first day of the opening of Jing Yu's restaurant, the entrance was already packed with people. Why hasn't it opened yet? A crowd of commoners gathered in front of the restaurant. The opening of the restaurant attracted the attention of everyone on East Street. It's open. It's open. Seeing the tightly shut doors slowly open, everyone's eyes suddenly lit up. They stretched their necks and wanted to look inside, but their gazes were attracted by a group of women who walked out. The women who walked out behind Shen Yuqing were all wearing golden robes. They were decent and elegant, and their hair was tied up. When they wore this robe, they had never seen it before. It perfectly outlined the woman's curvaceous figure. Thank you for coming. Today is the first day of the store's opening, so all the food and drinks are free of charge. Please enjoy yourselves. As soon as Shen Yuqing finished speaking, the crowd below the stairs immediately responded and applauded. Unveil the signboard. Shen Yuqing waved his hand, and the red cloth covering the signboard was pulled down, revealing the restaurant's name. Above the restaurant, 3 large words were written on a gilded plaque. Come if you have money. Ha ha ha, good name. There was a commotion below. Chapter 198. What a good name. There was a commotion below. Shen Yuqing wiped the sweat off his forehead, then stepped aside to invite everyone in. Everyone stepped into the restaurant and saw the unique decor, as well as the tables and chairs that they had never seen before. The hanging beams covered with fine gauze, the exquisitely carved screen, and the different types of bowls and chopsticks really shocked everyone. They were stunned by the extraordinary decorations in front of them. Everyone sat down one after another. The women who had just appeared were standing beside the guests with decent smiles on their faces. They asked the guests what they needed in a soft and gentle voice. This made the guests feel flattered. Only then did they realize that these beautiful women were the maids of this restaurant. It was really a big deal. Before everyone could recover from their shock, they suddenly heard the sound of horse hooves outside the hall. It immediately attracted everyone's attention. They all looked up, and when they saw the people who had stepped into the restaurant, they looked as if they had seen a ghost. Isn't this the young lady of the Shangguan family? One of the sharp-eyed people saw the 2 or 3 people who had just entered, and the 3rd and 5th young masters of the Shangguan family. Another person looked at the other 2 and said, "They have been invited by your boss." Shangguan Linglan looked at the restaurant in front of him in shock. His heart was filled with amazement. He looked at Shen Yuqing and smiled, then handed over the invitation card that he had prepared in his sleeve. "Young masters and young ladies, please come upstairs." Shen Yuqing's heart trembled fiercely as he took the invitation from Shangguan Linglan's hands. He hurriedly moved aside to allow Shangguan Linglan to go upstairs. His heart was filled with fear. To actually be able to invite someone from the Shangguan Great General's estate, the boss was truly extraordinary. Linglan. Just as Linglan was about to step forward, another voice sounded out, causing Shangguan Linglan to turn her head to look. Yuan, you're here too." Shangguan Linglan smiled when he saw who had come. Yes, let's go up together." Ning Xiangyuan was also very surprised by the scene in front of her. She turned to look at Lu Miaoqiu and said, "We met on the way here, so we came together. Let's go up." The 3 women went upstairs together, leaving behind a shocked crowd. These were all the children of officials, right? What was the background of this rich-cum boss? He was actually able to invite so many officials. It seemed like his background was not simple. Just as everyone was thinking, there was the sound of a horse reining in at the door. Another figure stepped in. That tall and imposing figure stood at the door, clearly shocked by the scene in front of him. Shen Yuqing almost bit his own tongue when he saw this person. "Little General Jing?" Shen Yuqing hurriedly greeted him and called out carefully when he saw Jing Lang looking around. "I was invited." Jing Lang nodded and handed over the invitation card. "Oh, isn't this Jing Lang? You're here too?" Jing Lang was about to go upstairs when he heard the voice behind him. He immediately stopped and turned to look. Fang Ziqing, who was wearing a white robe and smiling, appeared in front of Jing Lang's eyes. She actually invited you too. Jing Lang's dark expression suddenly became strange. She can invite you but not me? Fang Ziqing pouted unhappily and said, I got to know her before you. Chapter 199. Humph. Jing Lang snorted disdainfully and muttered in his heart, So what if I know her? She's my sister. Who do you think you are? Jing Lang and Fang Ziqing walked up to the second floor. The people downstairs were in an uproar. Who was Jing Lang? He was the general in charge of the 3 armies. He was actually invited. Fang Ziqing was also the only son of the Grand Secretary. Who didn't know him? They were both invited. Everyone couldn't remain calm. They all stared at the door and thought, there shouldn't be anyone here now, right? However, just as everyone was thinking this, there was another movement at the door. This time, the movement was quieter. Even the people who were waiting didn't come in. It shouldn't be anyone important. Everyone let out a sigh of relief and casually looked over. Everyone stopped breathing when they saw the pair of black brocade boots, the ink-black robe, the handsome and flawless face, the ice-cold black eyes, and the 2 shadow guards who were standing straight beside him. 9. Ninth Emperors. Shun Yuqing's legs went soft, and he almost knelt down. His body trembled as he went forward. His mind was in a mess, and he didn't know what to say. Invited. Xiao Chen narrowed his eyes and looked at the decorations in front of him. His eyes flashed with amazement. Although he had seen the drawings of the decorations, the effect of the actual decorations still surprised Xiao Chen. He indifferently handed over the invitation in his hand. Shin Yuqing took it in a daze. He watched as Xiao Chen led Xing Yi and Xing Er up the stairs with steady steps. Everyone in the hall was silent. No one spoke. There were too many shocks that had numbed everyone's nerves. At this moment, a small head stuck out from behind a screen in the dark corner of the restaurant. The face that was revealed was Jingyu. Jingyu clicked her tongue and looked at Xiao Chun, who had already gone upstairs. She muttered, Yaya. He's really flashy. Dong. Boss. Shin Yuqing trembled as he held the invitation cards in his hands. He still hadn't recovered from the shock. Not bad, not bad. Jingyu stood up and patted Shun Yuqing's shoulder. Now, no one will dare to look down on our restaurant. Shin Yuqing wanted to cry but had no tears. He held the invitation card in his hand and watched as Jingyu walked away. His little heart was trembling. Who would dare to belittle such a scene? Even the members of the royal family would have to behave themselves. Not to mention the children of the ministers. The presence of the 2 gods, Jing Lang and Fang Ziqing, was already shocking enough. Who would have thought that in the end, they would come up with an atomic bomb and the 9th Imperial uncle himself? This was simply asking for his life. The shock brought about by Xiao Chun slowly dissipated after a long time, and the delicacies that everyone had been waiting for were finally served. The first dish on the table was a plate of golden yellow cylindrical things that seemed to be fried. Everyone blinked their eyes as they looked at the food on the plate, not knowing how to eat it. What? What is this? A certain young master blinked as he looked at the thing in front of him that he had never seen before. He looked suspiciously at the maid beside him and asked, This is food? Yes, young master, please enjoy. The maid smiled shyly and retreated step by step with the plate in her hands. Everyone, this dish is called golden jade filling the hall. Please try it. Shun Yuqing took a deep breath and stood up with a smile. Chapter 200. Shun Yuqing slowly took a deep breath, stood up, and said with a smile, This, is it edible? One of the noblemen reached out with his chopsticks and picked up the thing. He blinked and said, The 9 emperors are all here, so it shouldn't be poisonous. After saying that, the nobleman tried to take a bite. Heavens! The nobleman's eyes widened, and his face was full of disbelief, attracting everyone's attention. This is a banana. It's actually crispy and fried. It's simply too delicious. The nobleman cried out in surprise and took big bites of the food on the plate. With one person taking the lead, the others also picked up their chopsticks and started eating. In an instant, the entire restaurant was filled with cheers. Shun Yuqing wiped the cold sweat off his forehead and a gratified smile flashed across his eyes. Seeing that everyone was still hungry after eating, he waved his hand and continued with the second dish. Round ball-like things were brought to the table. Everyone, this dish is called wealth rolling in. Please try it. Shun Yuqing's clear voice fell. With the prelude of the first dish, everyone started eating the second dish without hesitation. The taste of seafood in their mouths made everyone's eyes widen. This is octopus meat? Cabbage, what sauce is this? It's sweet and sour, so delicious. Cries of surprise rang out, and everyone kept nodding their heads as they ate. This was a taste that they had never tasted before. Jingyu hid in the back and watched as everyone ate happily, and her eyes curved into crescents. It was really too easy to get rid of. Just fried bananas and made octopus balls, and these people who had never eaten them before were full of praise. This was only the first day. The third dish was called sushi, a name that no one had ever heard of. After these 3 dishes were served, Shin Yuqing opened his mouth again and said that today's free dishes were over, and that they would meet again tomorrow. This time, everyone was anxious. They had finally managed to get their appetites, but they were actually sent away by these 3 dishes. Wasn't this just teasing them? However, the shopkeeper said that their restaurant only made these 3 dishes today. Not to mention that they only ate so little. Even the noblemen and the 9 emperors could only eat these 3 dishes. If you don't want to eat, then don't eat. Tomorrow's dishes are not welcome at our wealth rolling in restaurant. Once these words were said, everyone immediately shut their mouths and could only finish everything on the plate. They were just short of licking the plate. Boss, this move of yours is really useful. Shin Yuqing looked at the people leaving one after another and hurriedly turned around. When he saw Jingyu standing there, he went up to her and greeted her with a smile. That's a must. Jingyu raised her chin arrogantly and said, Tomorrow, the restaurant's entrance will definitely be full house. Let them line up until the restaurant be full, and if anyone dares to cause trouble, bring in the 9 emperors and the others. Yes, this little one understands. Shin Yuqing nodded with a smile. With the 9 emperors supporting them, who would dare to cause trouble? Jingyu instructed, and then ran up to the 2nd floor. The private rooms were on the 2nd floor, and the decorations inside were incomparably exquisite. Some were grand, some were simple, and some were gaudy. It all depended on what style you liked, and it was simply to the liking of the customers. Chapter 201. But today, Jingyu arranged for everyone to sit in a large private room to save herself the trouble. When Jingyu arrived, the atmosphere in the room was so oppressive that it was frightening. Why was that? Of course, it was because of the 9th emperor sitting at the head of the table. I'm sorry. I'm late. Jingyu entered the private room and smiled at everyone. When Xiao Chun saw that Jingyu had arrived, the oppressive atmosphere was significantly reduced. Only then did everyone let out a sigh of relief. Fang Zicheng gulped down his tea. He was the only one who could speak for the entire meal. If it weren't for him, everyone at the table would have left long ago. How was it? How was the meal at my restaurant? Jingyu looked around at everyone, then walked briskly to Xiao Qin's side and sat down. This action clearly pleased the 9th emperors. He completely retracted his oppressive aura and held Jingyu's hand in front of everyone. Jingyu, you're really amazing. You said you wanted to open a restaurant, and you really opened one. Shangguan Linglan's eyes were filled with admiration as he looked at Jingyu. That's right, that's right. Once your restaurant opens, I think more than half of the Jinyan restaurant's customers will leave. Fang Zicheng said sourly. Opening a restaurant requires real ability. If you want to steal business, you have to steal it thoroughly. Jingyu proudly raised her chin and said with a smile, sooner or later, the restaurant I want to open will dominate the imperial city. You're ambitious. I support you. Jinglang nodded seriously. It was obvious that he had high hopes for Jingyu. Yeah. It's all thanks to the help of the 9th emperors. Things will definitely get better in the future. Ning Xiangyuan sat elegantly in her seat and looked straight at Jingyu. Out of the corner of her eye, she saw Xiao Qian sitting calmly beside Jingyu, and a strange look flashed across her eyes. Yuan, you're wrong. I didn't open this restaurant because of Xiao Qian. Today's opening was also because he insisted on coming. Jingyu glanced at Xiao Qian and said, I thought he was pitiful, so I reluctantly gave him an invitation. Xiao Qian narrowed his eyes dangerously. He looked at Jingyu with a warning look, but Jingyu didn't seem to notice it at all. When everyone heard Jingyu's words, they all broke out in cold sweat. Jingyu actually said something bad about Xiao Qian in front of so many people. What was strange was that Xiao Qian didn't show any signs of getting angry. This made everyone's expressions turn strange. Quickly tell me, what do you think of the food? Jingyu looked at everyone excitedly and asked. I've never heard of or seen anything like this before. It's definitely the best in the Imperial City. Fang Ziqing shook his head and said, This young master has decided to come here to eat in the future. It's indeed wonderful. However, in my opinion, the 3 dishes today can't be considered dishes. They're just snacks, right? Jingyu raised the corner of her mouth and looked at Jingyu. That's right. They're not the main dishes. Jingyu grinned and looked at everyone and said, These are just small things. At most, they can satisfy your cravings. You won't be able to eat the main dishes today. Come back tomorrow. When Jingyu finished speaking, everyone's eyes lit up. Jingyu, who did you learn these things from? How did you make them? Shangguan Linglan looked like he hadn't eaten enough. He looked at Jingyu and asked. Xiao Qian, you go back first. I will leave from the back door. Jingyu pulled Xiao Qian down to the 2nd floor and said, Why? Xiao Qian frowned with dissatisfaction when he heard this. He looked very unhappy. My identity can't be known. Otherwise, people will think that this restaurant is opened by you. Jingyu pouted and said, Hurry up and leave. I will go home soon. The expensive price was indeed enough to make people stop in their tracks. However, there was no lack of people who were willing to spend the money. If they could eat such delicious food, it was worth it no matter how much money they spent. If they told their friends that they went to eat rich cum, countless people would be envious of them. Just like this, Jingyu's restaurant was opened with great vigor. When the restaurant opened for business, it really achieved the effect of making a lot of money every day. Shen Yuqing's face was blooming with a smile. Jingyu was also very happy. Seeing the business of the restaurant prospering day by day, Jingyu felt a great sense of accomplishment. In the blink of an eye, it was the 9th day of the 9th month, the Double Ninth Festival. Jingyu finally put down the matters of the restaurant. She taught everything that needed to be taught and left the rest to Shen Yuqing. Moreover, Shen Yuqing knew of Jingyu's identity. If there was any big matter, he could just send someone to send a message. Chapter 204. Jingyu completely let go of her hands and only focused on collecting money. So comfortable. Jingyu stretched comfortably and stood up. Yin Xiao went forward to help Jingyu change her clothes. Imperial concubine. The 9th emperors have entered the palace. Today is the Double Ninth Festival and the palace has bestowed double ninth cakes. When the 9th emperors leave the palace, Imperial concubine can go out and admire the chrysanthemums. Yin Xiao said as she helped Jingyu change her clothes. Oh, I'm not interested. Jingyu faintly curled her lips. She really didn't have any special feelings towards this Double Ninth Festival. What was there to see about the chrysanthemums? It was boring. Imperial concubine. Yin Xiao looked at Jingyu with hidden bitterness. All right. I know that you are bored in this Wangfu. When Xiao Qian returns, you can go out and walk around. Jingyu glared at Yin Xiao and said, Imperial concubine, you are so nice. Hearing this, Yin Xiao instantly revealed a joyful smile. Jingyu finished changing her clothes and after eating, she laid down on the soft couch. She held a storybook in her hands and read it with great interest. Not long after, she heard the sound of greetings from outside. With one look, she knew that Xiao Qian had returned. Jingyu raised her head from the book and looked towards the door. You're back? Jingyu looked at Xiao Qian, who was wearing a satin brocade robe, and walked into the room. And Xiao Qian made a sound in response and walked to Jingyu's side to sit down. He raised his hand and poured himself a cup of tea and said, Today is the Double Ninth Festival. It is very lively outside. Aren't you going to take a look? Aren't I waiting for you? Jingyu threw the storybook in her hands to the side and looked at Xiao Chun with a smile as she spoke. Waiting for me? Xiao Chun slightly paused. Seeing Jingyu's bright smile, the corners of his mouth curved slightly and said, It's rare that you want me to go out with you. Not bad. Xiao Chun nodded seriously and stood up. Jingyu's eyes widened. Was she being praised? Where are you going? Jingyu blinked and looked at Xiao Chun. Aren't you going out? Xiao Chun's footsteps paused and asked. Hearing this, Jingyu instantly beamed with joy and jumped off the soft couch. She tidied her clothes and brought in Xiao, Xingyi, and Xing'er out. It was indeed lively outside during the Double Ninth Festival. Chrysanthemums of various colors and shapes could be seen everywhere. There were also small stalls selling chrysanthemum cakes and hair accessories that were all in the shape of chrysanthemums. Jingyu held Xiao Qin's hand and looked around happily. Jingyu was very happy, while Xiao Qin's face was cold the entire time. No one would believe that the Ninth Emperor was strolling on the road. Therefore, Jingyu actually didn't attract anyone's attention when she held Xiao Qin's hand and went shopping. Luckily, Jingyu had already prepared a mask and wanted to cover the famous Ninth Emperor's face. But thinking about it, this was ancient times, and there weren't any televisions. How could anyone have seen the Ninth Emperor before? As long as you don't stupidly say your name and show off, I reckon that even if Xiao Qin stood on the road for an entire day, no one would think that he was the Ninth Emperor. They might even think that he was a crazy person who stood on the road without moving. Therefore, this shopping trip went smoothly. However, our Ninth Emperor didn't seem to like this kind of lively scene and kept frowning. If it wasn't for Jingyu holding Xiao Qin's hand, he would have already left in a huff. I say, if you don't want to come out, then don't come out. Don't you know how annoying it is to have such a long face? Jingyu stopped walking and looked at Xiao Chun unhappily. Xiao Qin's face turned even uglier. Chapter 205. Xiao Qin's expression turned even uglier. You can go back by yourself. I'll go play with Yin Xiao. Jingyu shook off Xiao Qin's hand and turned to leave. Stop right there. Xiao Qin's expression changed, and he suddenly reached out to grab Jingyu's arm. What are you doing? Jingyu was really angry. She hated interacting with people like this the most. He clearly didn't want to come out, but he still agreed to come out. It was fine if he came out, but he still had to pull a long face, as if she owed him millions. Jingyu simply couldn't tolerate it. If you want to see flowers, I'll take you somewhere else. Xiao Chun took a deep breath and looked around at the chaotic streets. He really couldn't find the slightest bit of interest. Where are we going? Jingyu blinked and asked. Follow me. Seeing that Jingyu had relented, Xiao Chun slowly let out a sigh of relief. He led Jingyu out of the streets, mounted his horse, and extended his hand to Jingyu. Jingyu looked at Xiao Chun, who was looking at her with his hand outstretched. After hesitating for a moment, she still extended her hand to Xiao Chun. The two of them rode together and sped towards the edge of the imperial city. There was a tall mountain there. Jingyu was protected in Xiao Chun's arms. Just like that, they bypassed the crowded main road and arrived at the foot of the mountain. Here? There's nothing here. Jingyu blinked in confusion as she looked at Xiao Chun, who was tying up the horse, and said, Let's go up. Xiao Chun saw that there was almost no one here and slowly let out a sigh of relief. He held Jingyu's hand and climbed up the mountain step by step. Along the way, she looked at the lush greenery and Jingyu's mood also calmed down. On the way up the mountain, Jingyu was bouncing and jumping, which made Xiao Chun smile. Xiao Chun, you should smile more. Jingyu looked at Xiao Chun's gentle smile and said, Look, he looks so good when he smiles. Xiao Chun didn't say anything, but the smile on his face deepened. We're finally at the peak. Jingyu sat on the stone steps, panting. She looked at Xiao Chun, who was not blushing at all. She glared at him and said bitterly, Why are we all walking? But nothing happened to you. I have internal energy. This is nothing. Xiao Chun raised his eyebrows. Jingyu's face stiffened as she stared at Xiao Chun and said, So you're saying that you can use your qinggong to fly up? Indeed. Xiao Chun thought for a moment and nodded slowly. Oh my God. Why didn't you tell me earlier that you have qigong? You made me walk so much. Jingyu jumped up and looked at Xiao Chen accusingly. I saw that you were walking happily, so I forgot about it. Xiao Chen said indifferently. Jingyu was stunned by Xiao Chen's words. She was roaring in her heart. Which eye of yours saw that I was walking happily? I'm so tired that I'm about to collapse. Jingyu glared at Xiao Chen bitterly. Her angry face was especially cute. Xiao Chen pulled Jingyu's hand and said, Didn't you want to look at the flowers? Come with me. After saying that, he held Jingyu's hand and walked into a small path filled with branches. The two of them walked through the tree-lined path, and a light appeared in front of them. Their vision suddenly opened up, and the wild chrysanthemums that covered the ground were exposed to Jingyu's eyes. Jingyu stood at the exit of the path and looked at the beautiful scene in front of her in shock. How did you know about this place? Jingyu's eyes were filled with the colorful wild chrysanthemums and the butterflies dancing among the flowers. Chapter 206. This scene was like a painting. Jingyu was stunned. I found it by accident. Xiao Chun narrowed his eyes and smiled comfortably as he looked at the scene in front of him. It's so beautiful. Jingyu ran over happily and looked at one flower, then another. Xiao Chun looked at Jingyu's actions and his eyes flashed. He walked slowly to a patch of grass and sat down. He leaned against the grass and narrowed his eyes as he looked at Jingyu. Xiao Chun, look at the garland I made. Jingyu smiled as she ran towards Xiao Chun with an exquisite garland in her hands. Xiao Chun nodded with his eyes narrowed. Haha, for you. Jingyu put the garland on Xiao Chun's head without hesitation. Suddenly, the cold-faced man turned into a flower fairy. Jingyu burst into laughter at his comical appearance. Xiao Chun silently moved the flower that was blocking his eyes away. However, he didn't take off the garland on his head. He looked at Jingyu, who was laughing so hard that she was about to burst out in laughter, and a gentle smile appeared on his face. How dare you humiliate this king? I think you're tired of living. Xiao Chen smiled as he spoke these words lightly. Jingyu saw that Xiao Chen's posture was not right, so she immediately turned and ran. Xiao Chen looked at Jingyu, who ran away like a wisp of smoke. He smiled evilly and chased after her. Ha ha ha, you can't catch me. Jingyu ran quickly as Xiao Chen chased after her unhurriedly. Looking at Jingyu's proud face, Xiao Chen suddenly chased after her. Jingyu cried out in surprise. Before she could react, Xiao Chun caught her in his arms. The two of them fell down the hill and rolled into the sea of flowers. Xiao Chun protected Jingyu's head with his hands and stopped them from falling. Where do you think you're going now? Xiao Chen's lips curled into a dangerous smile. Jingyu stared at Xiao Chen blankly. She could feel Xiao Chen's palm behind her head. In this situation, all Xiao Chen wanted to do was to protect her. Did he not care about his own hand? Xiao Chen. Jingyu bit her lips and looked at Xiao Chun. Xiao Chun narrowed his eyes and looked at Jingyu, who suddenly stopped smiling. Do you like me? Jingyu stared at Xiao Chun with her bright black eyes and asked, Xiao Chun, do you like me? This voice was like a curse that exploded in Xiao Chen's head. Xiao Chen's body trembled as he stared at Jingyu's face. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The surroundings were silent, and only their breathing could be heard. Ha ha ha. I've been fooled. Jingyu suddenly pushed Xiao Chen away and ran away. Her arrogant words sounded like she was cheering for being able to escape from Xiao Chen's restraints. Xiao Chun was pushed to the side by Jingyu. He supported himself and looked at Jingyu, who ran away. His lips curled into a helpless smile, but his eyes were filled with complicated emotions. Under Jingyu's laughter, Xiao Chun stood up and brushed off the weeds on his body. Jingyu seemed to have said those words just to deceive Xiao Chen. After that, Jingyu didn't say a word about what she had just said. She continued to play by the side until the sun gradually set. The two of them lay on the grass and looked at the orange-red sky peacefully. I have to go out to do something in 2 days. Xiao Chen rested his head on his arm and said indifferently, I might not be back for a month. Chapter 207. Xiao Chen rested his head on his arm and faintly said, I might not be back for a month. Dash, that long? Did something happen? Jingyu tilted her head and looked at Xiao Chun as she asked. Nothing big, just some things that I need to personally take care of. Xiao Chun raised his hand to pat Jingyu's head and said, Xing Er will stay in the manor. If there's anything, just tell Xing Er. Also, while I'm away, you have to take good care of yourself. All right, I definitely won't starve to death. Jingyu unhappily swatted away Xiao Qin's hand as she spoke. I'm afraid that while I'm away, the emperor will summon you into the palace. Xiao Chun sat up with a heavy expression and said, If that's the case, you have to tell Xing Er before you enter the palace. Isn't it just entering the palace? It's fine. Jingyu waved her hand as she spoke. I'm afraid that someone will take advantage of my absence to harm you. Xiao Chun slowly exhaled and said, Just remember my words. Oh. Hearing this, Jingyu's eyes flashed slightly, and she slowly nodded her head. My jade pendant is with you, right? Xiao Chun suddenly asked. Jingyu froze for a moment and didn't react to Xiao Chun's words. She looked at Xiao Chun with confusion, her eyes full of questions. Did she have a jade pendant? The first time we met, in the forest, I dropped the jade pendant, Xiao Chun said faintly. I remember now. Jingyu's eyes widened in realization. She blinked and said, I seem to have taken that jade pendant to hang around Yinjian's neck. Later, Yinjian dropped it, and then, I don't remember where I put it. Jingyu looked pitifully at Xiao Chun and swallowed. I'll go back to the manor and look for it immediately. It's in your dressing box. Xiao Chun looked indifferently at Jingyu and said, Wear this jade pendant at all times and don't take it off in the future. Why? What's the use of this jade pendant? Jingyu asked with confusion as she blinked her eyes. It can protect your life. Xiao Chun stood up and said, It's getting late. Let's go back to the manor. Oh. Jingyu looked at Xiao Chun, who didn't want to talk, and furrowed her brows, but she didn't ask any more questions. Jingyu, no matter what he said, she still didn't want to go down the mountain. She wanted to make it up to Xiao Chun to make up for the difficulty of the climb. So, she wanted to ask him to carry her down the mountain. Xiao Jing. This speed. It's simply amazing. Jingyu was shocked as she stepped on the ground. It was still the most comfortable to step on solid ground. She raised her head and looked at the mountain peak. The feeling of reaching the foot of the mountain in the blink of an eye was too good. Xiao Chun, teach me Qinggong. Jingyu suddenly said excitedly to Xiao Chun. You want to learn? Xiao Chun unbuckled the horse and frowned as he looked at Jingyu. Yes. How long would it take for me to be able to fly down like you? Jingyu's dark eyes were shining brightly. With your constitution, you should be able to reach it in 30 years. Xiao Chun looked at Jingyu from head to toe and said, What? Jingyu looked at Xiao Chun in horror. She was shocked. Sure enough, TV shows were all lies. Those martial arts experts were all fast masters. She actually needed 30 years. She would be old by the time she finished studying for 30 years. Forget it. If I want to fly in the future, I'll let you carry me. Chapter 208. Forget it. If I want to fly in the future, I'll let you carry me. Jingyu immediately gave up on the idea of learning Qinggong. Xiao Chen's eyes flashed with a smile as he brought Jingyu all the way back to the palace. After playing around for a day, Jingyu was exhausted. After washing up, she lay on the bed without moving. Xiao Chen returned to his study to handle some matters. According to Xiao Chun, he was about to leave the capital and had many things to take care of. Jingyu had never interfered in this aspect, so of course, she wouldn't say anything. The next morning, Xiao Chun set off on his journey. It's the 10th again. Jingyu stood at the entrance of the palace as she watched Xiao Chen's carriage disappear into the distance. Her brows slowly furrowed. Last time, he disappeared for 3 to 4 days. This time, he left for a month. Jingyu had a stomach full of questions. She didn't know why Xiao Chun would leave at this fixed time every month. After Xiao Chun left, the palace completely became Jingyu's world. However, Jingyu didn't have time to play around. Although the matter of the restaurant was settled, the brothel matter had yet to be settled. Why? The reason was simple. Jingyu was renovating the brothel. Halfway through the renovation, She ran out of money. She ran out of money. In the restaurant, Jingyu sat in her room with a distressed expression. This was an independent room with an exquisite design. This was also a room that Jingyu had built for herself. The furnishings were of a modern European style. Boss, young Master Fong is here. Just as Jingyu was at her wit's end, Shen Yuqing suddenly knocked on the door and bowed slightly to Jingyu. What is he doing here? Jingyu mumbled and waved her hand to invite him in. Little Yuer. Fong Ziqing smiled as he stepped into Jingyu's room. Don't disgust me. Jingyu rolled her eyes in disgust at the way Fong Ziqing addressed her. She said, Young Master Fong, why don't you take care of your Jinyan house? Why do you come to me? Are you trying to steal my skills? You're treating me like an outsider. Fong Ziqing poured himself a cup of tea and said, That restaurant belongs to Lord Jiao, and you are the 9th imperial concubine. Aren't we family? What's there to talk about secretly learning from others? Jingyu stared at Fong Ziqing and said, He is him, and I am me. We can't be confused. Fine. I knew you'd say we're not married again. Fong Ziqing put down the teacup and said, Ji threatened me before he left. If I let you get hurt in the slightest while he's gone, he'll skin me alive when he comes back. Jingyu said with a smile, Oh, it's good that he'll skin you alive. Anyway, your skin is thick enough. There's still another layer. Go. Fong Ziqing stared and said, I'm just here to see if you're hurt in the slightest. Yes, I'm hurt very badly. Jingyu looked at Fong Ziqing as if she was about to cry. Fong Ziqing was shocked. He quickly looked at Jingyu and said, Are you hurt? Here. Jingyu pointed at her chest and said, I don't have any money. My heart hurts. It's hurt. Fong Ziqing's mouth twitched. He stared at Jingyu speechlessly and sighed helplessly. He didn't know what to say. As time passed, the relationship between the two became much closer because of Xiao Qin's existence. Chapter 209. Do you know what makes the most money? Jingyu leaned on the table and stared at Fong Ziqing. Robbery makes the most money, Fong Ziqing said unhappily. Huh. Jingyu was slightly stunned. Then, as if she had thought of something exciting, she slowly straightened her body. Her eyes shone with an unknown light. Her greedy and excited look made Fong Ziqing's eyes widen. Hey. You can't be serious, right? I was just saying. Fong Ziqing looked at Jingyu in horror and said, Hee. Jingyu didn't say anything. Her creepy laughter made Fong Ziqing's hair stand on end. You. What are you doing? Fong Ziqing looked up at Jingyu, who suddenly came close. He swallowed his saliva and asked, You definitely didn't say it out of the blue. Jingyu looked at Fong Ziqing with a sneaky smile and said, Hurry up and tell me. Did you hear the news from somewhere? Is there a large amount of money to rob? Jingyu, you can't be serious, right? Fong Ziqing stared at Jingyu. Nonsense. Who's joking with you? Hurry up and tell me. Jingyu narrowed her eyes and looked at Fong Ziqing dangerously. If Ninth Master finds out, he will. Fong Ziqing looked at Jingyu pitifully. Don't worry about what Ninth Master will do. If you don't tell me, I'll ask someone else. Jingyu suddenly stood up and was about to run out. Hey, wait. Fong Ziqing hurriedly stopped Jingyu. If Jingyu ran out to ask someone else and exaggerated the story, Jingyu would really dare to rob him. If she didn't understand the situation clearly and made a mistake, he, Fong Ziqing, would really be skinned alive by the 9 emperors. That's right. Hurry up and say it. Jingyu sat back in her seat again and said to Fong Ziqing with a smile, I just heard the news that the Grand Tutor brought back a golden Buddha statue from the Nanli state as a birthday gift for the Empress Dowager. Fong Ziqing carefully said, This golden Buddha statue is as tall as a person and weighs dozens of tons. It's said that it requires 8 people to carry it. Oh my God, this Grand Tutor is way too rich. Jingyu's eyes widened as she looked at Fong Ziqing in horror. That's right. I heard this news from a friend. It said that Grand Tutor Fu Yin hired dozens of martial arts experts to escort the goods. He even hired people from 2 escort agencies to protect the goods. Don't even think about it. Fang Ziqing waved his hand at Jing Yu and said, "If that's the case, then all the more reason to take action." Jing Yu's entire body was riled up. "Do you want to die?" Fang Ziqing opened his eyes wide and said, "If Lord Jie was here, then it would be fine. But you're just a girl who doesn't know anything. What can you do?" "Humph, whatever Xiaoqin can do, I can do too." Jing Yu raised her chin arrogantly and said, "You." Fang Ziqing stared at Jing Yu and asked helplessly, "He has 2 escort agencies to escort him. What do you have?" "Me? I have Xing Air." Jing Yu smiled. Fang Ziqing stared at Jing Yu and didn't hear anything else after Jing Yu said that. He stared at her and asked, "And then? And then? And then there's you." Jing Yu smiled and patted Fang Ziqing's shoulder and said, "Oh right, why don't you call Jing Lang over and we'll do it together? How about we split the profits 50 to 50? Chapter 210. All right, why don't you go and call Jing Lang over? Let's go and do something. How about we split the profits 50 to 50? Dash. Fang Ziqing looked at Jing Yu as if he was looking at an idiot. In the afternoon, Fang Ziqing and Jing Lang were both sitting in the restaurant. When Fang Ziqing went to invite Jing Lang, he thought that Jing Lang would refuse. He didn't expect Jing Lang to come over without a second thought when he heard that Jing Yu had something to do. This initiative made Fang Ziqing depressed for a long time. "I say, when did you two become so familiar with each other? I remember that not long ago, you ran away when you saw Jing Lang." In the private room, Fang Ziqing stared at Jing Yu and Jing Lang gloomily as he asked, "Meddlesome." Jing Lang glared at Fang Ziqing, then turned to Jing Yu and said, Why did you call me over?" You even called me you. Tell me, what did you two do behind my back?" Fang Ziqing suddenly widened his eyes and glared at the two of them. "Fang Ziqing, you're so annoying." Jing Yu glared back at Fang Ziqing and said, "Say one more word and I'll throw you out." You too." Fang Ziqing's expression changed. What was going on? He was the one who befriended Jing Yu first. How did he become an outsider? Ignore him. Jing Lang glanced at Fang Ziqing indifferently. His pitch-black eyes were filled with complacency. Fang Ziqing felt a burst of pride when he saw this. He glared at Jing Lang and Jing Yu as they discussed the matter of the Golden Buddha. Jing Lang was shocked by Jing Yu's words. He looked at Jing Yu in shock and asked, "You want to rob the Golden Buddha statues?" Cough, cough, cough. "I've been bored recently, so I thought I'd just go and have some fun." Jing Yu's voice was a little low. She suddenly felt a little guilty after being stared at by Jing Lang, and even her voice became softer. "Nonsense. How am I going to explain this to the 9 emperors if something goes wrong?" Jing Lang glared at Jing Yu, his eyes filled with displeasure. "Such a big gold Buddha statue. There must be a lot of people who want it. Let's go and take a look. Maybe we can even benefit from it." Jing Yu lowered her head and muttered, "You wish." Jing Lang frowned and said, "This matter is of great importance. I have to discuss it with my father." "It's not a big deal." Jing Yu pouted and said, Anyway, I'm going. I'll bring Yin Jian and Yin Feng with me. There won't be any problems." "That won't do either." Jing Lang frowned in disapproval. I say." Fang Ziqing looked at the two of them talking back and forth. He frowned and said, "Why do I feel like there's something wrong with the relationship between the two of you? Jing Yu, when did you become so obedient?" "It's none of your business." Jing Yu jumped up when she heard that and glared at Fang Ziqing unkindly. The contrast between this and when she faced Jing Lang was too big. This made Fang Ziqing even more suspicious. Could it be that Jing Yu was having an affair behind the 9 emperors' back? Fang Ziqing suddenly widened his eyes in shock. He stepped forward and separated the two of them without saying anything. "What are you doing?" Jing Yu looked at Fang Ziqing, who was in the middle, and blinked as she asked, "Ahem, nothing. You guys can continue." Fang Ziqing smiled gently. His fox-like smile almost made Jing Yu slap him. "You're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.